The issue has never been the technology. The issue is us. Regardless of what the future tools may be, as long as we are the holders of these tools, nothing will change. Every generation needs to make the same mistakes, and every cycle needs to find its end, just so we can start all over again. Now, recently, I've been publishing a lot of essays and speaking a lot about the cycles of empire. And the reason that I do this is because every day right now, we are being bombarded with sensational and hyperbolic headlines about where we might be at this stage in history, where we might be at this stage in the American empire, in the US dollar, or are we entering the next World War, World War III? Now, I try to distance myself from the daily headlines because I don't think they carry much weight in predicting what comes next. But history does a much better job. So when I want to determine where we might be in the cycle of the American empire, I study previous empire cycles. And we don't have to look very far back in history, maybe 600 years, and we'll see the rise and fall of the Portuguese Empire, the Spanish Empire, the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, and the rise of the American Empire. And if we study those empires, we're going to see telltale signs, activities, and behaviors that occurred every single time during the rise to power, during the maintenance of power, and during the empire's fall. And if we become very familiar with those cycles and with those activities and behaviors, then we can use that as a lens to assess present day and say which activities and behaviors are present today. And that may give us a hint or a clue at where we might be at this moment in history, in the American world order, which is the world order that you and I live in today. Many people asked or challenged that due to modern technology and the future being so different from the past, that these historic cycles may no longer apply to us. Now, it's easy to understand this point of view. Our world is more connected, more centralized, and more rapidly evolving than any empire in history. And as a consequence, the old rules may not apply. But since it's easy to make that argument, today I'll argue the opposite, that it's not different this time and that nothing has changed. I will argue that the cycles of history are driven by human nature and not the available technology. So wish me luck, and I hope you enjoy this. Our world is different than it's ever been. We can travel, transact, and share information in ways that we never could in the past. But it is also true that every year of human history, since the discovery of stone tools and likely before, we have lived on the cutting edge of disruptive emerging technology. Technologies that would change our world forever. We harnessed fire. We domesticated wild animals and plants. We created spears, then arrows, then gunpowder. And in each case, we created a divide between the haves and the have-nots and altered the course of human development. After infinite generations of knowing, we suddenly discovered that that blue abyss on our shores didn't lead to a cliff, but to entirely new worlds filled with strange people and animals, unrecognizable, speaking in tongues we couldn't understand, and believing in gods that we had never heard of. Imagine the disruption at that time. We had discovered aliens in our true understanding of the word. We think that today our world is moving too fast and running away from us, but we shouldn't trivialize the experiences of our ancestors. They lived through the same disruptions and complexities. We've been here before, 100 times over. Let me tell you a story. This one is about my dad. My dad was born in 1942 and grew up in rural Saskatchewan. He was one of 9 siblings. He grew up in a house with no running water. Now, his family didn't lack running water because they were super poor. They lacked running water because nobody in rural Saskatchewan had plumbing in the 1940s. Now, it gets super cold in Saskatchewan, far below freezing for many months of the year. With no running water and a landscape completely frozen solid, where do you think they got their drinking water from? Well, all winter, my dad and his brothers would hike down to the river, break up big blocks of river ice, and then haul them back to the house to be melted in the living room. And that was the water they drank, washed, and cooked with, melted river ice. In the 1950s, he was harvesting drinking water from frozen rivers. By the 1990s, he was sending emails. How many moments of disruptive emerging technology had to have occurred between one activity and the other? I imagine him sitting at his desk discovering the internet in the 90s, the crossing of the Rubicon, a moment that would define history and change our future. And it did. The world did change. It became unrecognizable from what it used to be. But not my dad. He's still the same kid who used to haul blocks of ice from the river. The tools we have are different, but the behaviors that drive history are timeless. You could put a rock, a gun, or an iPhone in my hand. But I'm still driven by fear and greed, by love for my family, towards pleasure and away from pain. And this is why the cycle is not different this time. The tools in our hands shift, but the humans holding the tools do not. Let me put this in the context of money. In financial media, there are hot debates about reckless monetary policy, money printing, inflation, and the need for a hard, fixed currency. Both the gold and the Bitcoin communities believe they have the solution, that if we depart from our fiat money system and move towards a fixed, hard money standard, digital or physical, then wealth disparity, currency manipulation, and corruption will fail. And it's a promising thought until we visit any preceding empire ever. The Sumerian shekel of 6,000 years ago was tied to a portion of barley. The American dollar was tied to gold. Every currency in between has had a season of hard money ties, and every single time we abandoned it. The issue has never been the technology. The issue is us. Regardless of what the future tools may be, as long as we are the holders of these tools, nothing will change. And that's not a bad thing. We build it, we break it, and we build it again. Because here's the thing, I pride myself on being a student of history, but I still have to learn every valuable lesson the hard way. I need to experience it to know it. And that's why every generation needs to make the same mistakes, and every cycle needs to find its end just so we can start all over again.